Everybody, please take your seat. Please take your seat. Let's go. Come on. Okay, I'll calm down. It seems a little more mellow here. Did you guys enjoy the mentoring? Yeah? All right, so let's give it up for our mentors tonight. Thank you. Awesome. Just give me 1 second. We're going to switch this. You gotta set the mood. Okay, we're going to use the karaoke microphone style here. Doesn't really matter, but I'm going to do it anyway. There we go. All right, so thank you guys for coming out tonight to UX Night from Cascade SF. We already gave a round of applause for the mentors, but I think we can do it one more time because they are awesome. Thank you guys so much. It's rad. Thank you to all the volunteers, to the Cascade staff, and yes? Oh, well, I better make it quick. All right. So for tonight, if you guys are on Twitter, how many people are on Twitter here? Everybody should be on Twitter because it's a really good way for self-promotion and branding and getting yourself out there and sharing your voice. So I highly encourage, if you don't use Twitter now, you should go on there and just start making some connections. And it's a really good way to connect with the community, especially for some people who don't like to go out all the time. It's like, I want to make a connection with other designers around the globe. Twitter is the way to do that. You can follow us at Cascade SF, hashtag UX Night for tonight. That's our hashtag. I'm Andy Galpern, ANDIGALPERN. You can follow me. I'm also a designer, just like you guys, I think. So how many of you are designers here in the house? Okay, and stand up if you're a copywriter. I'm gonna say stand up because it might be easier to. Okay, and what about marketing? Yes, and I know we have a bunch of people from VentureBeat here tonight, I think. So you guys are great. Write us a good report. So anyway, we're also looking for more organizers. I'm going to Miami for a couple months and just start getting things launched out there and getting the East Coast Cascade launched in different cities around there. So we're going to need some more people to run the events here. We have some lined up, but if you guys want to be involved, it's a really good way to launch your career to the next level, stand up as a leader, get connected with industry leaders, and help your community out. You can email me, ANDI@CascadeSF, or you can visit cascadesf.com, and we have an apply to be an organizer section on there. Next, UX Night. Beautiful stars everywhere. UX Night is a monthly event where leaders in the design industry join together to learn and to grow. And when I say leaders, I don't mean just like the mentors, and I don't mean just, everybody who has the most followers. I'm talking about all of you guys. By stepping up and learning more to make your career better, to advance your skills, you're being a leader. And the more people that you share what you know with, the more that you lead. So don't be afraid to just share a little bit of information gets a lot of people much further than they were. So 5 minutes talking to the right person has changed my career, and giving that back to the community can do a lot for you. So step up, lead, and share your voice. Yelp. Thank you, Yelp. Wow, this slide is so bright right now. Yelp is hiring product designers. I know some of the Yelp staff was here tonight. Alexa was here mentoring. I don't believe she's here now. But is any of the recruiters from Yelp, are you guys still here? Yes? No? Right, I see one back there. What's your name? Oh, Sarah, that's right. Okay, Sarah is wonderful. Sarah's right back there, and she is, if you guys have any questions, Sarah, jump up and down. That's Sarah. She raised her hand. You can go speak with Sarah after the event if you guys are looking to apply for a job. They're hiring all kinds of product designers. But you can also go to cascadesf.com/Yelp and it'll auto forward to the Yelp hiring page. So now, gosh, this screen is so bright. I'm going to change it. There we go. That looks better. Now I'm going to go ahead and introduce, well, first of all, does anybody have, we're going to be taping this event tonight. Just so you guys know, it'll be online. And do we have to ask if they're okay with it, or do we just say, you better be okay with it? If for any reason you don't want to be on the tape, probably shouldn't sit in the front row. Are you guys all okay with it? Okay. It's all for Creative Commons. It's just to share knowledge and get more people the resources and information. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce the star of tonight's show, Mrs. Hannah Alvarez. I met Hannah maybe a couple of years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. We did some work with UserTesting and sponsorships. And then as they developed more of their content strategy and put all this wonderful information online and shared all this knowledge, I feel like you guys really did an incredible job building your brand. And that's kind of what you're here to teach us about. So it works out perfectly. So Hannah is from Dallas, Texas. She moved here 7 years ago for love. And yes. And now she's working as the content marketing manager over at UserTesting. And she's going to teach us tonight about human-centered copywriting. And everybody, all designers, no matter what you do, you need to learn how to write, because communicating your ideas is the most crucial thing, and that will help you with anything. Like, just be able to write simple, clean messages so you can get to the point as quick as possible. And that's what we're doing right now. Thanks, Hannah. Take it away.
All right. Thanks, Andy. Let's do a little switcheroo real quick. Can everybody in the back hear me okay? Can you hear me if I kind of talk like this? All right.
Okay, here you go.
All right, I've got my clicker.
That was fun. Oh yeah, turn off your phone on silent, people. Beautiful people.
Ooh. All right, here we go. So I'm Hannah Alvarez. I am the content marketing manager at UserTesting. If you haven't heard of UserTesting, we're pretty much exactly what we sound like. We're a platform for getting user feedback. And I have the best job in the world because I get to learn about what makes a good user experience and what makes a bad user experience. And then I get to help the world learn about how to create better user experiences. So I'm on Twitter at Hannah K. Alvarez. You can tweet at me. I will not reply until this whole thing is over, but if you would like to, I'll respond to you later. And today we're going to learn about human-centered copywriting. So I saw maybe 3 or 4 of you raised your hands when she asked how many people were professional copywriters. So I'm guessing the rest of you probably just get stuck writing copy sometimes. Does that sound about right? You have some copy that needs to be written, and it's not going to write itself, and so you're a marketer, or you're a designer, or you're a product person, and so you just write it, right? All right, so today we're going to talk about how you don't have to be a professional copywriter to do really good human-centered copywriting. I'm going to give you some of the tips to do that effectively. All right? Let's get started. Humans are weird. We have this desperate need to be accepted and to be part of a tribe. And yet we still need to stand out and express our individuality. We have tremendous potential for creativity and innovation. And yet sometimes we will go to extreme lengths just so we can be lazy. For those in the back who can't see, this is my series of wake-up alarms on a bad day. We hate doing things that we know are good for us, but sometimes we think we love doing things that are actually pretty bad for us. And on top of all that, we spend an enormous amount of time interacting with and relying on products and technology that most of us don't actually fully understand, right? If you just ask your sister, like, how does your cell phone work? Unless she's actually a really tech-savvy person, she's going to give you a pretty crappy answer. But she probably uses it every day, right? If you're here tonight, you're probably responsible for writing the words that form a relationship between humans and a company in some fashion or another, whether it's on the marketing side or the product side. You write the words that help people interact with a brand using technology. So today we're going to talk about humans. Humans are weird. Humans are silly. Humans sometimes pay attention. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're smart. Sometimes they're not. They're usually pretty suspicious. They're really easily distracted. And they're super opinionated. So knowing all of this, how can you write the words that help humans do what you need them to do? We're going to go over a couple of parts today. The first part is how copywriting fits into user experience. The second part is writing human-centered copy. The third part is what not to do. And along the way, I'm going to show you lots of examples, give you some tips that you can take home, show you some cool resources that I use a lot that you might enjoy, and then at the end, we'll do a little Q&A. All right, first part, copywriting and user experience. We usually think of UX and we think of interfaces and workflows and mental models and how people interact with a product. Can they use the product? Where do they click? Where do they tap? How do they find what they need to find? But I want to remind you that UX is the complete experience that a person has with a product. And copy is a big part of that. You're going to find copy everywhere. I think that's it. So copy can make or break the usability of a product. This is one of the reasons why it's so important. At UserTesting, we did a study on icon usability. And this was really interesting because we all interact with icons every day. And sometimes those icons have a piece of copy that goes along with them, and sometimes they don't. But these are some of the ones that we see all the time. These are ones that you're probably super familiar with. You probably use them in your own product. So we recognize that a heart is going to be something along the lines of like, I add this to my favorites, or I'm going to save this, or I'm going to add it to my wish list. But unless it's accompanied by some copy, sometimes it's really confusing to know exactly what's going to happen when you tap that heart. Does that mean that it's going to save it in some kind of location that you can come back to and reference later? Is it going to notify the owner of that image or that item that you liked it? Or is it just kind of like a general expression of approval, like, yay, good job? It's not really clear, right? If you just see a heart, it's not really clear. So we did this study, and the way we did it was we had, I think it was about 35 users, and we had them interact with icons on a variety of apps. And these were like normal apps that you use every day. So we did Twitter, we did Airbnb, we did Instagram, lots of famous popular apps that have icons, some of which are really easily recognizable, and some of which are not. And so what we did was we had the users take a look at the icon and then say what they thought would happen when they tap it. And then they tapped it, and then they told us whether the thing that they predicted actually happened or not. And we learned some interesting things. So the first thing that we learned was that for normal icons that people are used to interacting with, like a heart, if that icon was accompanied by a piece of copy, even if it was really short, even if it was just 1 or 2 or 3 words, users were 47% more likely to be able to correctly predict what would happen when they tapped that icon. 47%. That's pretty great, right? Then we took a look at icons that are not very common. So this is a flag. Flags sometimes mean things, but it's not really clear what this flag does, unless it has the piece of copy. And for those icons, users were 159% more likely to correctly predict what would happen when they tapped the icon. That's 1.5 times more likely. So that's a huge improvement. When you give users that extra little validation, right? We like to think that users are just going to sort of cheerfully tap all around on our app or on our website and kind of like figure their way around, but they're not. They're terrified. They don't know what to click. They don't know what to tap. When you give them that extra little validation of like, yes, you're in the right place. Go ahead, do the thing. It's fine. You're going to be happy. It's going to be good. then they're going to be able to do more tasks faster and with more confidence. And you're going to be building a better relationship with that user when they feel confident using your product. And the other way that copy fits into the user experience is that it shapes the user's perception of your brand. So this is where you're building the relationship. This is where you're saying, through your copy, through your choice of words, your voice and tone, this is who we are. I want to show you an example of two pieces of copy written by two different companies that are explaining very similar things. So what we're going to look at here is, this is some copy on two women's clothing websites. They're both introducing a line of vintage-inspired women's evening wear, okay? The product lines themselves are almost indistinguishable, but let's take a look at the copy. So on the one hand, we have going somewhere special, dressed up and ready to glow, shop soiree stunners. All right, so this is pretty straightforward. It's nice, short copy. We've got a little bit of fun alliteration going on. Seems pretty clear. Let's take a look at another example. Night fever. Late nights that turn into early mornings are kind of our thing. So dress like a midnight rambler and get your ass on stage. View the lookbook. All right, these are almost indistinguishable product lines, right? But these pieces of copy make the difference in the user experience, right? You can tell just by looking at this copy that they're speaking to really different audiences and they're building really different relationships. This is where you get to determine what is that relationship, that friendship like between our customer and our company? Are we their friend? Are we their mentor? Are we their cool older sister? Or are we like that kind of distant authority figure that only ever comes around when they're in trouble? This is where you get to determine that. So don't forget that copy is very literally the conversation that you're having with your users. And they're going to be sizing you up based on how you present your copy in the same way that you size up a new acquaintance based on how they speak to you when you first meet them. They're going to be forming opinions, forming judgments, deciding whether they want the relationship to continue. So let's talk about writing human-centered copy. The way we're going to do this is we're going to go over 5 weird quirks about humans. These are just strange little aspects of humanity that apply to almost all of us. And when you know about them, it's going to help you write better copy. Weird thing number 1, we're basically terrified of everything. When a user is interacting with a product for the first time, they have all these little micro insecurities and worries and questions going on in their heads. My credit card info secure? Am I doing this wrong? Will I be able to get back to this screen? What if none of these options apply to me? Will I have to talk to a salesperson? Your job as the copywriter is to answer those questions that are already going on in their heads. All of those fears and doubts. They're going to read a piece of copy and they're going to say, wait, what about? And it's your job to meet them there with the answer. So one way you can do this, this is an example that I got from PayPal recently, and I thought this was really effective. So I got an email from PayPal saying that my friend had sent me some money. It told me how much money, it told me who it was from, it had the little note from her. And then they answered the one question that might be a huge pressing concern in my head. They answered it right here. So I get this notification that I get the money. Maybe I hop over to my PayPal account and I say, oh my God, the money isn't there. There's supposed to be $415 in my account and there's like 2. And so it says, don't see the money in your account? Don't worry. Sometimes it just takes a few minutes for it to show up. Phew. That has been addressed. They did a really good job of anticipating, like, what is the user going to freak out about? And then they've just answered it right there for me ahead of the fact. Converse does a good job with this too. So if I'm shopping for shoes online, that one micro insecurity that's constantly going on in my head is, I'm shopping for shoes online. I don't get to try them on. I don't know if they're going to fit. What if they don't fit? How do I know? How do I know what size to choose? How do I know if I can return them? And Converse has addressed this right here. They just added in big red letters, runs a half size large. It doesn't answer all of my questions. I still have a couple of remaining questions, but it's definitely helped me out. It's given me that extra sense of confidence of, okay, at least I know what size to order. I'll find out about returns and all that business later. Weird human thing number 2. We read almost nothing, and then we forget almost all of it. Every website, every app, every piece of copy is different, but there have been Nielsen-Norman Group studies that show, on average, we read about 20% of the words on any given web page. So of all of the words that we see, we read a small fraction of them, and we remember an even smaller fraction of those. So I'm sure if I asked any of you, tell me about a website that you checked out today. Tell me what the copy was. What did you read? What did you learn? Nobody really wants to answer that, right? Unless there was some really snazzy headline or something. We barely remember anything. But if there is less copy on the page, if there are fewer words, then we're going to read actually a larger percentage of those words, still not all of them, but we're at least going to encounter more of the words, and we're going to remember a larger chunk of those. So keeping it short, it doesn't have to be, the one line for every paragraph, but if you can condense your copy down, then you're going to have a higher likelihood of users actually reading it and actually remembering it. And there's an old piece of copywriting advice that goes, write your copy, then cut it in half, and then cut it in half again. And I think that that applies even more to writing for the web and writing for mobile than it did, back in the old copywriting days. Keeping it short, nobody's actually paying attention. So keep it short, make them pay attention to a little bit, and they'll actually remember it. In a perfect world, we would give our users only one thing to do at a time. I think it would be amazing if our whole lives were like that. There was only one thing to do at a time, and then we could move on to the next one. And this is something that you can really take advantage of in your copy. So if you are working on a landing page, pick a single call to action, right? You don't want to say, oh, go check out our resources, and then go and read this thing, and then sign up for a free trial, and then contact our sales team, and then They're not going to do any of those things if you give them too many to do. Try to give them one thing to do, present it very simply, and they'll be more likely to do it. We see this a lot. This ends up being sort of a recurring issue, I think, in onboarding processes in apps. So sometimes you'll get the walkthrough screens at the beginning of an app, right? And you'll have some screens, maybe the copy on there is really good, maybe it's really effective, but there's too many things to do at once. There's too many things to remember. So when a user enters this app for the first time, they have all of these actions they can take, all of these instructions that they need to remember. It tells them how to use the interface. So you can drag and drop to move, you can touch and hold to delete, you can tap to view full screen. By the time they actually get into the product, they don't remember any of that. It was too much information, and it was too soon. So if you can give them their one thing to do at the moment when they need to do it, they're going to be a lot more likely to actually do it, to actually remember how to do it, and then they'll never need to read that copy again. Which might be a little sad. Your copy gets to go and never show up again. Let me show you how how Google Maps has done a nice job with this. So this is an instruction for how to use this interface. Tap or pull up for place details. Great. They didn't tell me that when I first opened this app for the first time. They told me that when I might need to find my place details. So as soon as I'm able to do that, I develop the muscle memory, I do the action that I need to do, and then I can forget the copy. The copy just sort of fades into the background. It'll probably never even show that copy to me again. But that's effective. That gets the user to take their action right away, learn how to do it right away, and establish that behavior that you want them to do. That's effective. Weird human thing number 3. We need to both fit in and stand out. What we want to tell our users with human-centered copy is, yes, you are awesome. You are part of an elite tribe of awesome people who are all somehow better than everybody else, equally so. You want to give your users the validation and the confidence that they need to take the action that you want them to take. Some copywriters, especially old school copywriters, marketers are pretty guilty of this. They fall into the trap of writing copy that makes users feel small, that makes them feel invalidated, that makes them feel like they're worthless, they're ugly, they're useless without my product. And here's what I have to say to that. We're here for human-centered copywriting. We're not here to trick people into taking an action. We're here to empower people to take an action. We're here to build a relationship with our user. We don't want to leave them feeling slimy. We want to leave them feeling like they were sold something or like they were tricked into doing something. We want to build an ongoing relationship. We want to provide an awesome user experience, and we want to bring them back for more. This is an example I saw on Dove recently. So I think Dove works really hard at that validation thing, right? A lot of beauty companies do that, they fall into that trap of like, we'll make you feel really ugly and then you'll have to buy beauty products. And Dove, I have mixed feelings about Dove. Say what you will about them. We can talk about it later. But I think they work really hard at trying to make people feel confident. Like, yeah, you know what? I actually am kind of beautiful. Maybe I do deserve to treat myself. So this is something they said about curly hair. They did this ebook about Love Your Curls. Help curly girls everywhere take pride in their hair. Read and share our book inspired by real women. This is a lot more positive language than we normally see on women's beauty products, right? So instead of saying, your curly hair is stupid, it's hard to manage, you need to fix it, and our product can do that, they're saying, we don't want to change you, your curly hair rocks. We just want to help you be your awesome best self. Apple is another really good example of this. And so I want to read you a little piece of copy from their Why There's Nothing Quite Like iPhone page. Because to us, things should always be easy. Like answering the question, how many different messaging apps should it take to send words, voice messages, group messages, photos, videos, Easter Island Stonehead emoji, my location, and weird cat gifs to everyone I know? Answer, 1. Or, how much should it cost to send all that stuff to people who have an iPhone or iPad or Mac? Answer, nothing. And also, how do I make a video call to my best friend who's halfway around the world? Answer, FaceTime. And last question, shouldn't all that stuff just come built into my phone? Yep. So I have a little confession to make. I'm not actually an iPhone user. I'm an Android user. Oh, yay, we've got some Android love. What? At a design meetup? You're kidding me. I'm an Android user, and I don't disagree with any of this, okay? I'm not like this horrible Android person who's like, you know what, things should be difficult. You should have to have like 80 billion different apps to do all this stuff because I'm an evil Android user. Right? No, I agree with this. Everyone agrees with this. But Apple has written this in a way that makes you feel special for believing in it. It makes you say, yeah, that's right, I do believe in that. I'm on your team and everyone else sucks. Even though they don't, right? They've done a really good job of making you feel like part of an included crowd of people who are better than everybody else. So when you're writing copy, you don't even have to like necessarily find that one thing that your users believe that nobody else does. You can find something that everybody believes. And then when your users agree with you and they feel like they're on your team, that's effective copy. I'm going to show you another example. This is from Virgin America, and this is toward the bottom of their homepage, and this is kind of like their upselling area, right? So they have this offer to take the fast track. Breeze through security like you own the place with TSA pre-check expedited screening. Find out how to enjoy the benefits. I think they could have handled this in a really different way that would have been way less effective, right? So signing up for TSA pre-check expedited screening kind of sounds like, if you're not familiar with it already, it sounds kind of like something that's really elite, right? It sounds like something maybe you do if you're like a diplomat or something and you're like traveling all the time, you're super fancy. And I think Virgin America has done a really nice job of making this probably kind of fancy thing seem accessible, but also luxurious, but also within your reach. And that's kind of a tricky balance, right? But by writing it this way, they've made you think, yeah, you're right. That would be awesome. I could see myself doing that. I deserve that. Wouldn't it be awesome if I could just breeze through security like I own the place? I hate feeling like I don't belong in the airport. I hate feeling like I'm just, cattle or something. I would love to just breeze through security. And they've done a good job of making that seem achievable. here's a little exercise that you can do when you're writing copy, if you want to do this effectively. Before you even start to write a word, just sit down and fill in the blank. My users are the kind of people who really blank. It can be, my users are the kind of people who really hate waiting in lines at the airport. My users are the kind of people who really like things to be simple. My users are the kind of people who really freaking love cheese. Whatever it is, even if it's something that applies to everybody, it's going to give you a starting point. And you're going to be able to sort of build on that relationship of validation, of, yes, I get you, you're awesome, let's go. Weird human thing number 4. Our environment affects our ability. I want to talk for a minute about accessibility. And a lot of people kind of write accessibility off because they think, oh, that's for like making accommodations for people who are blind or for people who use some kind of assistive technology. And that's not really my user. No, that's wrong. Accessibility is for everybody. Accessibility makes the user experience better for everyone because from time to time, we all experience what's known as situational limitations. And so what that means is that even if you are fully abled, so you have 20/20 vision, you don't use a wheelchair, you don't use any kind of assistive technology, there are going to be times, many times in your life, when you're not functioning as if you were fully abled. So maybe you have a migraine, or maybe he has a hangover, I'm not sure what he has. Maybe you have something like this guy. Maybe you are just feeling really irritated because you got some bad news. Maybe the sun is in your eyes. Maybe you're hangry. Here's an example that I bet a lot of people can relate to. Let's say that you have a really important appointment and it's on the other side of town in a place that you've never been to before. And you had it all kind of planned out. You knew you were going to leave early and then something happened and you weren't able to leave early. You're running late. You realize you haven't actually looked up directions to this place yet. And so you're kind of scrambling to get there. You're on your phone. You're looking up directions and you end up actually going to the wrong place or getting some bad information somehow that makes you even later to your appointment. Because you weren't able to function at the full capacity that you think you should be able to. This is real life. And this is your user. So how do we make our copy more accessible? Plain language. Plain language is your friend. Plain language means don't use 4 syllables when 2 syllables will do. Don't use words that someone's going to have to look up in a dictionary. Even, you might think, oh, well, my users are all like a pretty brainy bunch. They all have really extensive vocabularies. What are you trying to prove? If you make things more difficult on your user, you want to speak your user's language, but you also want to make things as easy as possible on them. Some people think that plain language and simplifying your copy means dumbing it down, and they think it's going to alienate their user base. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. Simplifying your language and making it easy to understand is going to make you friends, right? No one is going to be mad at you for making something easier to understand. You're going to save them time, and you're going to build a better relationship if you make it easy for them to comprehend what you need them to do or what your brand is all about. If you completely zone out for the rest of the evening, this is the one thing I want you to remember. This is too easy to understand. I hate it. Have you ever heard anybody say that? I have never heard anybody say that, okay? Anytime you're trying to get a little bit like clever, a little bit, academic with your copy, stop, gut check yourself and say, am I actually improving the user experience by making things harder to understand? Probably not. Here's some good resources for if you want to learn more about plain language. I could go on about this all night, but I'll just leave you with these. So plainlanguage.gov, I actually have been informed that if you want to go there, you need to type www.plainlanguage.gov. Just plainlanguage.gov won't do it, so apologies in advance for that. But this is a good resource for if you just want to learn what plain language is about, and you want to read some really good guidelines for implementing plain language on your website or your product. Center for Plain Language, you can find them online. It's a lot of people who are really passionate about using plain language and about accessibility in copy. So this is a great resource for people who are sharing examples of great plain language in use. And then for when you're writing, I am in love with Hemingway app. I don't know if you guys have heard of this or not, but this is something I try to use at every possible opportunity. So Hemingway app is a text editor. It's just an online app. You copy and paste your text into the text editor, and it's going to highlight any sentences that are like too long or too windy. It's going to highlight all of your adverbs because you probably don't really need to be using that many adverbs. And then it's going to give you a score of how easy it is to understand. So you should probably set yourself a benchmark. I think like under 10 is, if I'm recalling, is pretty good. If you're getting a score of like 23, then it's time to do some editing. So it's a really good way to just check if your copy is actually accessible and if people are going to be able to understand it. Weird human thing number 5. We don't want to like you. Unless your product happens to be free puppies or free cupcakes, which if you've found a way to make money on that, let me know and I'd like to join your team. People are going to be automatically a little suspicious of your motives, right? Especially if you're trying to sell them something or you're trying to get them to use a new piece of technology. They don't want to like you. They have their suspicions. They don't want to give you the benefit of the doubt. They don't want to give you their money. That means you're going to have to win friends and influence people. And luckily, you can do that with your copy. The key to winning friends and influencing people is empathy. So what do we mean by empathy? I'm sure you guys hear that term a lot. I'm sure a lot of people use it for, various reasons. It tends to be a buzzword that people write off a lot. But what I'm using it for is understanding how the user is feeling in the moment when they take an action, right? Understanding that and saying, oh yeah, I kind of know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to not understand something. I know what it feels like to land on an app for the first time and be really irritated because I'm not exactly sure what I'm supposed to do first. Those kind of things, that's building empathy, right? This is an example I saw on TurboTax when I was doing my taxes. And this is, I think, a really great example because everybody hates doing their taxes, right? And you would kind of expect an app that helps you with your taxes would probably be kind of sucky, like doing your taxes. But here's this one screen. Like to take care of some quick legal stuff? Neither would we. No one likes legal forms, but signing one combined form now will save you lots of time later. And their little copy on their button says, sounds good. This sounds like a conversation that you would actually have with a person about doing your taxes, right? If you were sitting down with your friend and they said, I don't know how to do my taxes, you would say something like this. And it's pretty delightful because, honestly, TurboTax could have said, please complete tax legal form 1076QAZ to proceed, right? But they didn't. They put a little bit of thought into it. They said, how is the user feeling? They have to fill out a legal form for their taxes. They are not feeling happy with us right now. Let's meet them where they're at. Let's give them a piece of copy that acknowledges how they're feeling, which is not very good right now. And then they're actually going to do the thing. This is another example. This is an onboarding email that you get from Litmus, which has an email preview tool. So if you're designing an email and you need to check how it's going to display in different email clients, you can do that in Litmus. And Litmus sends you this onboarding email that says, how's it going? We hope the email previews tool has been useful to you so far. Don't let Lotus Notes get you down. It's not nice to anyone. And I think this is really especially great because Litmus realized that at this point in their customers' workflow, they're probably feeling discouraged. They probably got so excited to use this new tool, and they built this awesome email template thing, and then they tested it out, and it looks awful in Lotus Notes. And that's a point where Litmus might lose a customer. That's where they might say, you know what? This whole email testing thing is actually more trouble than it's worth. I don't have time to make it look beautiful in Lotus Notes. I'm not gonna use Litmus anymore. And Litmus has figured out that this is the point where that might happen, and they've addressed it at that moment. That's empathy, and that's good copywriting. All right, let's move to part number 3. What not to do. We've been looking at some good examples, and now it's time to look at some bad examples. So for all of you mean-spirited people out there, it's your time. This is the number one thing that I think is wrong with most bad copy. Bad copy serves the company's needs while ignoring the users. And here's the real problem with that. Your company's needs should be the same as your users' needs, okay? If your company's needs and your users' needs are not aligned, then you should maybe think about updating your resume because you might be on a sinking ship. And one of the ways that we see this in action is jargon. You're probably all familiar with jargon. Jargon is technical speak that only people with either a certain skill set or people who work in a certain industry are going to understand. Sometimes jargon is inevitable, right? Sometimes people think, well, my audience is so, technically, savvy, technically savvy, yes, technically capable, that it would be silly to use plain language for them, right? So let's talk about that a little bit. I want to tell you a story. This is Uncle Joe's story. Uncle Joe is not the most tech-savvy guy, but he does use a computer every day, right? And at one point, he gets this little pop-up that he needs to update to the latest version of Java. And he knows, okay, yeah, this is probably a thing I should do. So he clicks through, and then he gets to this page, which makes him choose a version. And he's going, oh, well, I know I use Windows, so I'm in the right place there, but there's this 32-bit thing. There's an offline 32-bit thing. I'm not offline, so probably not that one. And then there's a 64-bit. I don't know which one I need. But luckily, there's a handy little piece of copy. Which should I choose? I'm going to click it. He clicks it. Which download should I choose? Choose the 32-bit download to use with a 32-bit browser. Choose the 64-bit download to use with a 64-bit browser. So, at this point, he still has no idea what to do, even after he has specifically asked for help figuring out what to do. Okay, this is jargon at its worst, right? This is jargon that people who don't know what 32-bit and 64-bit browsers are going to encounter at some point in their life. If they have a computer and they use Java, they're going to encounter this. And they're going to say, I don't know what to do. And so he just picked the 32-bit one because, screw it, it was first, why not? I'm sure that'll work, great. I'm sure this made sense when Java was writing this, but they did not take into account the fact that lots and lots and lots of people use Java, even the ones who don't know what kind of browser they have. So let's keep in mind that not every user is your ideal user. And this kind of cuts both ways, right? Some people use jargon to kind of qualify their audience, especially if it's like a first touch. So on a landing page, they're going to use some jargon to sort of weed out the looky-loos, right? If you don't understand this, you probably don't belong here. Don't go ahead and fill out the form. Don't take the action. This isn't for you, right? But on the other hand, not every user is your ideal user, but your unideal user might be your buyer, right? So maybe if you're a women's shoe company and your target user, your target buyer is a woman who's over 40 and makes over $100,000 a year and really prefers designer brands. But maybe that person isn't actually the person who's shopping at the moment. Maybe the person who's shopping at the moment is that woman's husband who really wants to surprise her, and he doesn't know anything about designer shoes, right? This also applies to B2B, believe it or not. A lot of B2B companies use way too much jargon, and they use it kind of as a qualifier, right? Like if you don't know what this is, you don't belong here. But the problem with that is also maybe the buyer isn't your end user. Maybe you have an end user, but the person who's actually going to hand you the money is that person's boss. And maybe that person's boss doesn't know the jargon, right? If they can't figure out the value, they can't figure out why they would need to hand over a credit card for this, then they might not do it. So here are some tips for avoiding jargon. Use plain language if and when possible. I know that there's going to be tons and tons of exceptions here, but when you're going to write something, if you think you might be using jargon, just stop and ask yourself, could I get away with saying this in a simpler way? Would my users totally hate me and think I was stupid if I said it more simply? And if the answer is yes, like your users would completely hate you if you didn't use jargon, then it might be a good idea to include optional definitions and instructions for the people who land on your site or who use your product who aren't your end user, but are your buyer. And they do need to get definitions for these things. So I've seen some good examples of this, like there was a women's clothing site that was talking about like different types of prints, right? And there's animal print and there's critter print. I'm like, what the heck is the difference between those? I actually do know the difference between those now, right? But what would be really helpful is if they had a little option to click through. Maybe there were some visual examples to go along with, like, here's what animal print is, and there's a little picture of, like, animal print is like an animal skin, like a cheetah. Critter print is like pictures of animals, like a bunch of little owls on your sweater. If there was some sort of little, like, key, if there's a way for you to include that, that's a great way to get around the problem of, like, well, we want to use the jargon, but we don't want to alienate our end user who's super jargony. Just add that as an option. Hide it somewhere, but make it findable to the person who's going to be making the purchase decision. Here's another example of a way that we do bad copy. Fluff. Fluff is anything that doesn't actually accomplish anything. Fluff is just the language that's kind of thrown in there that I think we all do from time to time when we're like, I need to put some words on the page. I'm supposed to put like 80 of them. I really only have like 2 sentences worth of stuff to say. I know. I'll add some adjectives. We've all been to college. We've all done this, right? This is a good example. So this is an agency. This is on their About Us page. This is describing who this agency is as a company, right? We leverage design thinking to help our clients gain a competitive edge by developing solutions that drive customer engagement holistically. So what do? I think design stuff. So if I'm actually like looking around for an agency to help my team out with some projects, and I'm trying to figure out, like, hey, is this the one that's going to be easy to work with? Am I going to have an account manager that's not like a total pain in the butt? And I get to this, I'm going to be like, oh my God, if my account manager speaks to me this way, I'm out. I'm not doing it, right? This is where the company's goals and the user's goals are kind of at odds with each other. Because the company wants to sound smart. They want to be like, yeah, look at us. We're innovative. We are leveraging design thinking. I bet you can't do that. That's why you need us. But the user's just going, I just need to pick an agency. I need one that's not going to suck. So those are at odds with each other. Let's talk about how to avoid fluff. Make a list of words to never say. Your hit list of words, the words that you think are either stupid or pointless, it's going to be different for every company, right? It depends on your brand. It depends on the relationship that you have and that you want to have with your users. But I have a massive list of these. I hate a lot of words. And I will actively go after anybody that uses them on my team. But it's a good thing to have in your back pocket. It's a good thing for you to just sit down and define, like, this is not what our user wants. This is not our brand. We don't say these things. And then it's good to get your team on board with that. Every word you write should serve a purpose. There's a saying that goes, every word you write diminishes the value of the words before it. So again, we're back to keeping it concise. Words that don't actually help you build that relationship with your user, words that don't actually help the user do what they need to do, see if you can cut them. Just try it. Like, you don't have to settle on it for good. Just give it a try and see what it's like without them. Use verbs and the word because. So verbs, action words, doing things, these aren't descriptors. These aren't showing how great something is. These are showing what you do, right? That's always going to be a little bit more effective for the user than describing how things are. The word because is a magical word. There have been studies, these like cool little social psychology studies where they had someone go up to some people who were in line at a copy machine, right? And they had some papers in their hand, and the person going up asked 3 different ways. Could I cut in line? So when they just asked, could I cut in line? The people at the copy machine were much more likely to say, no, you can't cut in line. I've been standing here. Get out of here. Go to the back of the line. But if they said, could I cut in line because I'm really in a hurry? Then the people at the copy machine were dramatically more likely, and I should have looked up the numbers. I don't have the numbers for you. But they were dramatically more likely to let that person cut in line. Even if the reason was a really stupid reason. So they also tried, could I cut in line because I have to make some copies? Like, yeah, no kidding, you're at a copy machine. We all have to make copies. The people at the copy machine were still dramatically more likely to let the person cut in line. Like, crazy, just because they use the word because. So it's kind of a magical word. It might seem cheesy. Even now that you know it, you're still going to fall into the trap of letting people do things because they asked because. So try to do that when you can. All right, here's another thing that we do that creates bad copy. Obfuscation. Just for the record, I don't actually recommend using the word obfuscation in your product copy. But here I think it applies. So obfuscation means making something obscure or unclear. And I think a lot of companies, especially B2B companies, are really, really bad about this. And companies that are trying to kind of like cover up an unpleasant truth that they don't really want to own up to, they're really bad at this, right? I'm going to have to take a sip of water before this next one. So this is an example that I'm going to show you. It's a rejection letter from a government agency to a person who wanted to open a pharmacy in a neighborhood, right? They applied to open this pharmacy, and they got this back. The committee concluded, having regard to the totality of the factors considered above, that choice could not be given significant weight and that there was not currently a gap on the spectrum of adequacy sufficient to conclude that the provision of pharmaceutical service is not currently secured to the standard of adequacy. Accordingly, the committee concluded the application was neither necessary nor expedient to secure the adequate provision of services in the neighborhood and therefore dismissed the appeal in this request. So, they could have said, your application is denied. And if they wanted to be really helpful, they could have said, your application is denied because your neighborhood already has a pharmacy. If you want to open up a pharmacy, try a different neighborhood. And honestly, like, that sounds a little silly, but think about the difference in the relationship with that user that response would have created, right? Like, if you were that person and you just wanted to open a pharmacy and you got that, you would have been like, oh my God, I'm changing my life goals. I'm going to go make some shoes or something instead because, like, if this is what I have to put up with, I am not down. But if they got something that was actually, like, even a little bit helpful in response, they would know what action to take next. They could be like, oh, great, I'll pick a different neighborhood and just reapply. I know what to do now. We're cool. Let's talk about avoiding obfuscation. If there's an issue, just own it. Don't hide it. Don't cover it up with like 20 other words. You're going to be building a much better relationship with your user if you are honest and open about why the thing happened and what to do to rectify it. Even better, if you have like, hey, that wasn't good, but here's what we can do instead, then that's going to be so much better, right? You're going to be building that relationship with the customer, and they're going to come back, right? You're building that relationship for life. Make helpful recommendations if you can. I mean, if there is something that you write and you don't know what action is related to it, you don't know what you actually want the user to do, then you need to go back and do some editing. You need to be recommending some kind of course of action, because if you're not, then it's just words on a page. Okay, let's talk about cleverness. Cleverness can be a big problem in copywriting, and it's also really, really dangerous because as designers and as marketers and as word people, it's fun to be clever, right? That's like, we like that about our jobs. We like to have a little bit of like creative expression and inject some delight. We're into that kind of thing. But if the cleverness doesn't actually serve the user and doesn't build the relationship, then it's pointless. It's just for yourself. This is an example. So this is on a cute app. It's for dog stuff, right? So you create an account, and it says, sign me up for Adoggable updates from Bark & Co. When I read this, I did have to take like a microsecond to stop and be like, did they misspell adorable? Oh, no, wait, I got it. Cute, because it's dogs. I get jokes. So, if it were not as part of a workflow, right? If it were just like a cute little thing on the side or maybe like a banner ad or something, that would be one thing. But this is when a user is trying to take an action. This is like an instruction for them. Sign me up for what? That's where it's dangerous, right? You don't want to use cleverness when you're trying to get a user to understand what to do. Keep it out of your instructions. Save it for ads. Save it for cute little like loading screens or something, right? Use your cleverness there. The other problem is that, like, for people who don't necessarily speak English as their first language, that's going to be like, oh my god, what are they going to send me? What is autogable? I don't even know. So, use cleverness with restraint. I'm not going to say avoiding cleverness because I do want you guys to have fun. I do want you to be clever when you can, but let's just say managing cleverness. Don't force it. If you feel like you have to write a joke just to be cute, then that's like a really bad indicator, right? If this magnificent joke or cute thing occurs to you and you think, oh, this is going to be magnificent, this is like exactly what the user experience needs, then that's a good indicator. But if you're like, you know what would be cool? A joke. That's kind of a red flag. So don't force it. Don't get clever with your instructions, right? If there's copy that users need to completely understand in order to take the action that you need them to take, don't get clever. Keep it simple. Save your cleverness. And always ask yourself, does it actually support the brand experience? Like, if I give them a little clever turn of phrase right now, are they going to be like, oh yeah, that's awesome. That's so me. If so, yeah, great. Go for it. Proceed. But if it's actually not really building that relationship, cut it. Be merciless. Cut it. Find something better, funnier later. So let's write some awesome human-centered copy. I'm going to give you a few tips for how to figure out, like how to find your own human-centered voice. So tip number 1 is to listen to how your users actually speak. This might seem pretty simple, but I would be willing to bet that a lot of you haven't really done it that much. So the way that you can listen to your users speaking, find out what words they actually use to describe their problems, right? So you can do this by observing users interacting with technology. You can do this through a user test. You can do this through like if we want to get all research nerdy, you can do like a remote free exploration test where you sit down with a user or you do a remote user test and you have them try to solve the problem that your product solves without ever touching your product, right? So for example, let's say, all right. Thanks. Let's say that you are selling like a help desk solution, right? So you would just have your users like speak their thoughts aloud while they go searching for new help desk software. And you would hear how they describe their problems and pick up on those words. And maybe they're different from the words that you use to actually explain your brand. So those are words that you can now use. Another way to do this is to see how your people in your target market are speaking about their problems and their ideas on Twitter or whatever social media. See what phrases they use, see how they're describing your competitors, and see if you can kind of like steal some of those words or shape some of those words. Tip number 2, question everything you write. I have a lot of quick little gut checks that I do when I write anything. So ask yourself, just go ahead and write something, write a first draft, and then ask yourself, does this provide value? Does this make sense? Does this make me sound like a jerk? Does this build the relationship we want with our users? Tip 3, test everything you can. Don't just pick one thing and go with it and be married to it for life. Try a lot of different things, right? Get tons and tons of feedback from your colleagues. We have a little rule on my team, which is you cannot publish anything unless you get at least 2 pairs of eyes on it. So get quick gut checks from your colleagues. A/B test anything you can. You can A/B test subject lines on emails. You can A/B test copy on your homepage. Just do it. There's no excuse not to. It gives you a lot of freedom to try different approaches, see what works, do more of what works, stop doing what doesn't. Create a voice and tone guide. This is going to be your team's roadmap to writing effective copy, right? And it can be really simple. This doesn't have to be fancy. This can literally be like a column of say this, don't say this. You can also include like your grammar nerd stuff in there if you're into that. Yeah. And you can include some sort of guidelines around like, this is how our brand interacts with our customers. And if you want inspiration for this, go check out MailChimp's voice and tone guide. It is the best. It's really long. They have different tones to use in different scenarios, like when a customer's mad at you, or like when you're on chat with somebody. So this is going to be a real key to feeling confident about the copy you're writing. Number 5 is get your team on board. So share your voice and tone guide. Get people in a room talking about how your copy affects your users. Remind your team that every word you write is shaping the relationship that your company has with your users. What kind of relationship are you building? So that's pretty much, oh wait, there's an alternate ending. So if that last slide was a little too touchy-feely for you, let's talk pragmatic. All right.
Whoever has awesome camera, take a photo of her.
Alternate ending. All right, plot twist. Human-centered copywriting is not actually all about warm fuzzies, right? We're talking about empathy, we're talking about building relationships. That's well and good, but it's also really practical from a business standpoint, right? If you can write effective copy that actually makes users do stuff because you understand them and you understand how they need to get to where you need them to get, then you're gonna have a much better bottom line in the end. So do human-centered copywriting to make money. Do it to increase your conversions. Do it to improve your customer retention. If you hate the warm fuzzies, this is for you. All right, that's the actual ending. So, do we have a few minutes for Q&A? Do we need to go back to the alternate ending slide?
We have to be out of here by 9:15, 9:20 the latest. We said 9:30, but we know it takes a little bit of time to get everybody out the door, and we love you. We want you to stay here all night, but we have to let the Yelp people go home. So, you have a choice. One is you can come up and talk to Hannah, the darling Hannah, one-on-one, and just schmooze and booze until we gotta get out the door for 15 minutes, or you can ask a question. What do you guys think? Questions? Okay, but that means that everybody's going to pick up the garbage off the floor and exit appropriately when we say, get out! Okay, so who has a question?
And if there are questions we don't have time for, you can just tweet at me.
2 questions.
2 questions? All right. Yeah, what's up?
I was wondering if you can talk about when long-form copy is actually appropriate.
Sure. When there are technical aspects required, right? So I guess actually the short answer is when it makes the user experience more clear, right? If there is a lot of information that the customer needs to digest in order to be able to do the thing you need them to do, right? If they're making a really intense purchase decision and they need a lot of information and they need to weigh a lot of costs and benefits and they need it all right now, then yeah, go long form. Long form for just SEO kicks, I would recommend against it, right? Quick gut check just for everybody to apply, if it serves the user experience to have longer form copy. I was actually just talking with somebody about this beforehand. She had some copy that she really, really needed to condense down into 5 words, but just given the constraints of what she was trying to do, that didn't make any sense. So if the user needs more copy, do it. Give it to them.
Awesome answer. Okay, wait. You guys want to condense your question?
So I just want to build up on what you just said. A lot of times, SEO copywriting is very important as well. So, sometimes it's needed.
Sure.
So
yeah.
What's the balance? Because you have certain keywords you need to put, and then, you need longer copy, all of that.
Yeah.
So how do we sort of get a balance?
I would say be strategic about your keywords. Pick them with purpose instead of just trying to pick everything and cover all your bases and just write tons and tons of copy. I would also suggest splitting it up over different pieces of content, right? If you're trying to build your SEO, then you don't need to put it all on one page, right? Unless that is the one page that anybody is ever going to encounter for some reason. Try to break it up into digestible pieces, right? You don't need to put every keyword ever imagined into one paragraph. Find strategic ways to section it out in ways that make sense to the best of your ability. Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of blogging. Blogging has been huge for our organic traffic.
Becky, we have one more question.
I'll make it quick.
Yeah.
Is there a kind of a easy way to figure out what words and what tone works for your brand? Like,
test it out. Talk to your colleagues. You know what would be really fun is to get your colleagues together in a room and have them all spend like 30 seconds writing down the 5 words that they would use to describe what you do, right? And then see if everybody's in agreement. And if they are, awesome, build on that. And if they're not, then you guys need to have a discussion about like, what is it that we do? How do we need to be speaking about our product and about our company? That's a great place to start.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Woohoo! We have time to talk to Hannah too. Everybody, give it up for Hannah.
Everybody.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Yelp, for hosting us. And if you guys are interested in a job at Yelp, Sarah is back there. You can come speak with her. Also, you can always send me an email. I can forward along your information if for any reason you got to get going. Andy at cascadesf.com. But you should go talk to Sarah while you're here and make an awesome impression. Hannah, thank you, darling.
You're welcome.
Yes. Awesome.
All right, thanks so
awesome
much,
talk.
everybody. And if anybody wants user testing stickers, I brought stickers.
Yes,
in case
you
you're a
should
swag
have one.
person or a stickers on the MacBook person like me.
One?
Yeah, you want one?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, bye everybody.
really
Thank
good.
you. Thank you so much. Yeah, my pleasure. I'm gonna turn this off.
Hey guys, also if you can pick up your garbage and throw it away and help us clean up the space because we love Yelp and we want to show them how much we love them. Please clean up your garbage.
We have traveled land and sea, but as long as you are with me, there's no place I'd rather be. I would away forever, exhausted.